I still remember that cold Thanksgiving night. The streets were glowing with soft golden lights, laughter echoing from houses. But for me, there was only silence. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I stopped in front of my son's house. It had been 3 years since we last spoke. I told myself I'd just surprise him, maybe share dinner like old times. But deep down, I was terrified. Would he even open the door? The porch light flickered as I stepped out, holding a small pumpkin pie I'd baked myself. I walked slowly toward the door, my breath turning into mist. I pressed the doorbell once, then again. Through the window, I saw shadows moving, and a little boy laughing. My grandson, maybe. My eyes burned with tears. Maybe tonight, I thought, we'll be family again.
The laughter inside stopped for a second when the bell rang. I waited, hearing muffled voices, footsteps, then silence again. I pressed the doorbell once more. My heart pounded. I imagined my son walking toward the door, smiling, saying, "Dad?" But no. The door never opened. The warmth from inside seemed to vanish. I stepped back, staring at the bright windows. I could see them, my son, his wife, and my grandson, sitting around the table. The turkey glowed golden under the lights. I stood outside, invisible, as if I'd been erased from their world. I whispered, "Ethan," hoping he might hear me. But the wind carried my voice away. As I stood there, freezing, memories flooded in. I remembered the night he stormed out 3 years ago. We fought over something small, something so meaningless now. I'd told him he wasn't responsible enough to start a family. I'd said cruel things, words that cut deep. When he left, I thought he'd come back the next day. But days became months, and pride became a wall neither of us wanted to break. Now here I was, standing outside that same son's house, too old and too ashamed to knock louder. I felt foolish, a father who had built his life but lost his only child to ego.
A car slowed down beside me. The neighbor rolled down the window, smiling politely. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked. I nodded quickly. "Just visiting family," I lied. She smiled and drove off. I turned back toward the window. Inside, my grandson lifted his tiny hands, showing something to his father. My son laughed, a laugh I hadn't heard in years. It warmed me, yet hurt like a knife. He's happy, I thought. Maybe he doesn't need me anymore. I took a deep breath and decided to leave before anyone noticed. But as I turned, the door creaked slightly. Not fully open, just enough for a sliver of light to escape. I froze. Through the narrow opening, I saw my daughter-in-law. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Collins?" she whispered. I smiled awkwardly. "Hello, Sarah. I was just passing by." She hesitated, looking over her shoulder. "Ethan's busy with dinner," she said softly. "Maybe you can come tomorrow." Her words were kind, but her tone was careful. I nodded, pretending it didn't hurt. "Of course. I didn't mean to interrupt." She gave me a sympathetic smile and closed the door gently, politely but firmly. The click of the lock sounded louder than thunder. I stood there staring at the wood grain, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life.
I walked back to my car but couldn't bring myself to start it. Across the street there was a small bench near a lamppost. I sat there, watching families through their windows, children laughing, couples clinking glasses. The The warmth of Thanksgiving was everywhere except in me. I pulled my coat tighter. A gust of wind blew the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon pie. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Happy Thanksgiving, Ethan." My phone buzzed, a message from an old friend, wishing me well. I stared at it for a while, and put it away. My family should have been the one texting me. I'd never felt more alone.
Then I heard a small voice behind me. "Grandpa?" I turned around, stunned. It was him, my grandson, standing in the cold, wearing tiny boots and a sweater too thin for the weather. My eyes filled with tears. "What are you doing out here, buddy?" He smiled shyly. "Mom said I shouldn't, but I saw you from the window. I told Dad you were here, but he didn't say anything." My throat tightened. I crouched and hugged him. "You've grown so much," I whispered. He giggled. "Dad says you live far away." I smiled weakly. "Yeah, maybe too far." His little hand slipped into mine, warm and trusting. "Will you come inside?" he asked.
My heart raced. "I don't think your dad wants that right now," I said softly. He frowned. "But it's Thanksgiving." I smiled sadly. "You're right, it is." He hugged me again, quick and tight, then ran back toward the house. I watched him knock on the door, once, twice, excitedly calling, "Dad, Grandpa's here!" I froze, unsure whether to hide or wait. The door opened. Ethan stood there, his face pale. He looked across the yard and saw me sitting under the streetlight. For a long moment, neither of us moved, just silence and snow between us.
He took a step forward, then stopped. His eyes softened, but his jaw tightened. I could see the battle inside him, anger fighting guilt. Finally, he said, "Why are you here, Dad?" I swallowed hard. I just wanted to see you. It's Thanksgiving." He looked away. "You could have called." I nodded. I know, but I didn't know if you'd answer." His face changed, a flash of pain, then distance. "You can't just show up after everything." I lowered my head. "I know. I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am." But he just stood there, the cold wind blowing between us like a wall we couldn't cross.
He sighed and turned back toward the door. "Dad, this isn't the time." I wanted to reach out, but the words wouldn't come. My mind flooded with old images. The day he was born, his first bike ride, the way he used to fall asleep on my chest. How had we gone from that to this? I whispered, "You used to call me your hero." He froze. Slowly, he turned his head. "Heroes don't say things they regret forever." I felt tears sting my eyes. "You're right," I said. "But maybe heroes can change?" The words hung in the cold air, fragile as glass. For a moment, he didn't move. Then, without looking back, he said, "Wait here." The door closed halfway. I stood there, heart pounding, unsure what to expect. Minutes passed like hours. I thought maybe he wasn't coming back. Then, the door opened wider, and Sarah stepped out, holding a blanket. "He said you should at least come in for a cup of coffee," she whispered. My chest tightened. "He said that?" She nodded gently. "He's trying." I followed her inside, every step feeling heavier than the last.
The warmth of the house hit me like sunlight. The smell of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and fresh bread filled the air. My grandson ran to me, dragging a chair. "Here, Grandpa, sit," he said proudly. I smiled, lowering myself onto the chair, feeling the heat thaw my fingers. Across the table, Ethan sat quietly. His eyes were still guarded, but softer now. I whispered, "You have a beautiful family." He nodded. "We try." The silence was heavy, but not hostile. I could feel something beginning to shift. Small, fragile, but real. After a few sips of coffee, I finally spoke. "Ethan, I came tonight because I didn't want another year to pass like this. I don't care who was right or wrong. I just miss you." He looked down. "You said things that broke me, Dad." I nodded slowly. "And you leaving broke me too. But maybe we both learned something. How empty pride can be." Tears glistened in his eyes. "I thought you stopped caring." My voice trembled. "I never stopped. I just didn't know how to show it." That was the truth, the most painful truth I'd ever said. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he stood, walked around the table, and pulled me into a hug. It was hesitant at first, then firm, trembling. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. I held him tightly. "Me too, son." The years between us melted like the snow outside. My grandson giggled, clapping his hands. "See, I told you Grandpa's nice." Ethan laughed through tears. Sarah smiled softly, wiping her eyes. For the first time in years, it felt like home again.
Later that night, we sat together at the table. Ethan carved the turkey, and he handed me the first slice. "You start, Dad," he said quietly. I looked around the table, at my son, his wife, my grandson, and whispered a short prayer. "Thank you, Lord, for giving me one more chance." The fire crackled, the laughter returned, and the house glowed with peace. Outside, snow began to fall, covering the street where I once stood alone. But this time, I wasn't outside looking in. I was home.